Hello and welcome to the DSP Project, your fix of music production and technology. I'm your host, Rupert Brown. First of all, before we get started, I want to say a big happy holidays. Hope you all had a fantastic break and look forward to what will hopefully be a very productive 2013. In this episode, I will be reviewing Stutter Edit. It's a real-time effects processor that's been developed by Izotope in conjunction with BT, who I'm sure most of you know. It's quite a big name electronic music producer. Let's have a listen. So as you can hear, it's capable of some really cool sounds, but one thing you may notice is that they're quite extreme. With some of these effects, it's kind of gets to the point where rather than sounding like the original signal with an effect on it, it's kind of like playing a completely different sound effect. So you've got your song and then it sort of clips over to some crazy loud thing and then jumps back when the effect closes. Where I personally found it more effective is when you have your tune broken up into sort of separate stems as opposed to playing it over the top of everything. So in this next demo I'm going to show you is the same thing, except for we're going to play the effects just on the drums this time and leave the rest of the signal unaffected. So I think that second demonstration was better, really. You still get the cool effect that's happening to the drums getting mangled, but basically the rest of the song isn't disappearing, so you've still got some sort of structure and anchor, so it's not completely taking you off to a different place when you hit the effect button. So in my opinion, I think it's probably, well, for me, for my workflow, it was more effective in that situation. And I tried using both in a real live set, doing the effects over the top and doing the effects over individual buses, and I definitely found that it's definitely suited going over individual buses better. Now, of course, you can modify all of these gestures, create your own gestures that aren't as intense, but if you do start piling up all those different modules, then you are going to get these, like I say, very extreme effects that kind of feel like you're going from a song to a sound effect and back again, as opposed to just a a cooler, creepier version of what it is that's already being fed through the plugin. So let's have a look now. We'll go into a bit more depth and really look at this interface and see how it works. Starting in the top left-hand corner, we've got mode. Inactive is like off. Stutter generator is a white noise generator. Just have a little listen to that. We've got a gesture here. So gesture is basically their name for a patch. So each key on your keyboard sends a MIDI note into Stutter Edit, and for each key that it receives, it plays a gesture. You can only play one gesture at a time, so by pushing the different notes, you can jump between your different gestures. Moving over to bank, which is basically like a collection of your gestures. So you've got all your presets here, you can see. We can save. We've got a preset manager, which allows us to, you can see in this particular demo, I've just started up a blank one, so we've only got one gesture loaded in, but I can open up other presets, copy, paste them, move them around to the different notes. I've got a little keyboard here that I can use to preview the different effects as well, and just manage your presets. At the top here, we've got a global filter, which is a high pass / low pass filter. We'll have a quick listen to that. You can hear it's very resonant type filter. I think you've actually got an option for that. Gentle, which is like a less resonant version, so you won't get that. You don't get that sort of big pop in frequency. Moving down here, we can select the time ranges for the Stutter Edit, and we've also got little notes, like a little keyboard here. So quite an interesting effect here is when the stutters get so tight that it becomes a pitch, you know, it gets really high to a pitch, you can then actually pitch shift to certain notes. So you can actually get those high points to match in with the notes inside of the song. Moving down to this bar here, we've got Jit Gesture Length, which is how long the gesture is spread out over for. We've got the release mode, so on the grid means at the moment I've got the grid set to 1/8 over here. So when I hit a key, it will be quantized to a 1/8 when the effect comes in. So with the release, it means on grid, it will, when I release, it will turn the effect off within 1/8. Full gesture means it plays the full gesture length, so in this case it would be 1 bar. Latch means I push the button once for the effect to come on and then have to push the button again for the effect to come off. Instant means as soon as I let go of the key, then the effect will stop. Stick is kind of like latch. You push it once and the effect goes on, but it will actually stick at the end of the gesture rather than moving back and forth. Speaking of moving back and forth, that brings us over to palindrome looping nicely. Palindrome looping is basically like ping pong looping. So rather than something getting to the end and then beginning at the start and working way to the end, when it gets to the end, it will actually work its way backwards and move back and forth, and hence the name ping pong looping or palindrome looping. We've got help, a few settings there. Moving down into the effects, we've got stutter. So this is where our basic stutter takes place, and when you first see all the effects going at once, it might look a bit intimidating, but it's actually a very easy to use user interface. We've got an on-off button at the top here for each effect. Then we've got this bar here, which if I double click, I can drag these little handles out, and it will start at blue and work its way to green. And you'll see there's a little dot that moves along the line. So I'll just play. See that little dot moving across there? So that shows us whereabouts it is inside of that position. So on the loop length here, if I double click, I can lock them in place. So I might want to drag these up to somewhere higher. Or I might want it to go from, let's say, very low to very high. Or I might want the effect to go the other way. So what I can do is drag the handle over the top of the other handle. And so now we're going to sort of start high and work our way down low. Below that, we've got a kind of a curve control here. So at the moment, with it set in the center, it moves evenly from the start to the finish within the gesture length. But if I move this over slightly, you'll see that there's a bit of a curve to how it moves. Or if I go the other way, then it's going to stay fast and then take longer to get to the slowing down. So that's kind of cool. And that is the basics of how just about all the effects inside of Stutter Edit work. So just to give you a better idea of how this sort of keyboard thing works here, I'm going to be working this inside the high end of the stutter, and you'll see there's a little blue light which comes up underneath each little yellow blob to tell you where it is, whether it's a percentage cut or whether it's being pitch shift to a certain note. So I'll just play that now. We've got a gate width, so this allows us to take the piece that's being repeated and either play the whole amount of the piece of audio, or we can actually bring it down, we can gate it down so you get sort of a smaller, tighter piece. So if we have a listen to what that sounds like, we'll need to bring this stutter down into something you can hear a bit easier. Down here. So you'll hear at 100% here we get a whole piece. But if I move this over, you get sort of a smaller pieces repeated. Or a very tiny piece. And of course, like anything, we can automate how this moves. So let's move into smaller pieces. So you get some really sort of tight little clippy, glitchy bits happening there. Pan, so we can pan between each stutter piece. For the stereo delay, we've got here, we can set different delay times for the left and right channels. It actually sounds better if we use the high. Some of the more high pitched stuff can sound more interesting. Pass for the delay. Moving over to buffer position. So one of the nice things about Stutter that a lot of real-time effects processors don't do is it's actually real-time sampling what's coming into it. So that allows us to do a couple of cool things. Basically with this bar here I can select what piece we want to repeat. So we can buffer repeat just the first of the four pieces of the bar, so we should just get the kick at the beginning here. Oh, this will make more sense if we have let's do it down here. So it's just running over the kick there. But if we moved it over, we're probably going to find there's going to be a snare on the 2 here. Oh, that's loud. And I've got reverse set there, so we can see what's going on there, and we can reverse it. The reverse is cool if we want to do, let's say, the whole thing, but let's make it quite big stutters. Working way down, we've got a low pass filter, which does exactly what you'd expect it to do. And a high pass filter here, which again, just as a high pass filter. Bit reduction. Lo-fi, which is like reduces the sample rate. Finally, you have the dry gain and the effect gain, so you can use these to change the mix of the dry versus the wet or affected signal. I sometimes have to play with these if you've got quite a lot of effects on and it creates quite a big boost in the levels, then you can use these to shimmy the levels so that it sort of stays a bit more consistent. So as you can see, even though it might be a little bit intimidating at first, it's actually a very easy to use user interface. And with all those different modules, when you start combining stuff, there is a lot of room to create a lot of really cool sounding effects. Now, one thing I did touch on briefly is it's actually set up a bit differently than your normal effects plugin. You may be used to putting an instance of a plugin onto the channel you want to affect, and then maybe mapping the controls of the plugin or on-off for the different effects to your controller. But Stutter edit works a little bit differently. You load the instance on the channel that you want to affect like normal, but you then need to feed MIDI notes into the plugin. So you need to create a separate MIDI channel and then send the MIDI information from the MIDI channel into the Stutter edit plugin. Now the reason for that setup is it's basically designed around a keyboard. So you can have a keyboard there, you've got heaps of notes on your keyboard which trigger your different gestures, and then you've got the jog wheel, pitch wheel on the end there that you can use for the global filter. Now that's all well and good if you have a keyboard. Sweet. If you've got a controller that can send note data, like for instance a launch pad here, or maybe an APC-20, you can send note data. But if you've got something like an APC-40, well then you're in a little bit of trouble. There is a way around it, and I'm going to show it to you, but I think that it's something to keep in mind about how it's set up is you'll need to be able to send note data. So if you're not using it with a keyboard, if you're using a different kind of MIDI controller, then you maybe need to have a think about how you're planning to interact with it, because if you've just got a controller with knobs, while that is great for a different effects plugins, it's actually not going to help you in this instance because you really need to be sending that note data. But there is a way around it, and I'll show you how to do that now. Here we have a live set with two channels loaded in. I've got a drum channel with this single one drum loop loaded in, and also a instance of Stutter edit loaded in. You can also see there's a blue box there as I've got my APC-40 plugged in and set up. Second channel is a MIDI channel. Now if I was using a controller that sent MIDI notes like a keyboard, then I would select the controller here. I would say I want to monitor the MIDI coming in from that controller, and then I want to send it out to and select the channel of which the Stutter edit's in. So in this case it's the drums channel, and then if there was multiple plugins I'd have to select Stutter edit, but as there's only one plugin it's selected there by default. So now I would be sending MIDI data from my keyboard through into the plugin, which would work fine, but in this case with the APC-40 we can't do that. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is, I'll set this in the input, is we're going to use dummy clips. So I'm going to double click to create a new clip, double click here and pull this out so that we've got a note. I want to turn looping off, and I also want to change the launch option. So push the little L here, and rather than having it in the global quantization where it would wait till the next bar, because that's what I've got set for global quantization at the top here, I want to set it to none, so that the instant that I press the clip is the instant that it's triggered. So in theory now I've got on my APC-40 in front of me, I should be able to push play and trigger the effect. Perfect. Now I've got two options here as far as the setup. I'm going to duplicate these a bunch of times, and then basically I have to go through each one of these clips and change it to a different note so that it can trigger a different gesture inside of Stutter edit. Now I could leave it just like this using my grid-based controller, and as I scroll down I would have to put in new clips into each section. The potential advantage of this is I might have specific effects that work better with a specific tune, so this way I could actually kind of group them up, which buttons, which effects are triggered inside of which tunes. Although if I want to have one button always locked onto one effect so I can really memorize it and know what it does, it's very simple. It's just a case of hard mapping using the MIDI map here. So I'm going to select the top one and push the top key on my APC-40 and work my way down like this. So now all four of these controls are mapped to my APC-40 key. So what that means is if I'm working my way down through my set and I've actually gone past where these clips are and I push play, I can still trigger them. Like so. So as you can see, there are ways around using this with a controller that doesn't send note data. looking at the presets, they are very extreme, so you do need to be very careful with them. This is not a piece of software that you can download, install, and then pick a preset blank and take it out that night to the club and just start mashing stuff and seeing what happens, because it is going to overload and it is going to sound like utter shit. So I think that they are maybe guilty of not putting enough effort into the plugins, because there is stuff there where I'm going in really quite quiet, like -14 dB or something like that, when a DJ is going to be sitting right up here at sort of -2 or something. And even down there, applying some of those effects just creates the crazy overloading, peaking, loud, nasty noises. So I know some of you will be sitting there going, well, yes, they're the presets and you should really load all your own stuff and have your own thing. And, yes, you're right. You should really go through and design all your own gestures and not rely on the presets. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people do use the presets. A lot of people do just want to buy it and load it up and not have to spend hours programming it and just put it on top of their sets for whatever reason. So I don't think that is really an excuse for them not taking the time and really being considerate of the levels for all the different effects. As I touched on before as well, if you're thinking about something to use for inside of a live set where you've got your channels separated out, then I think it would be fantastic for that. I think that if you are using it for a DJ where you want to put it over the top of the whole track, then you really need to think about what style of music you're playing as well. Like for me, over the master bus was too much. I felt, as I said before, it kind of felt like I was just throwing in a random sound effect and then going back to the song. But then I know some styles of music may favor that. So if you've got sort of some of that very American style dubstep where it sort of cuts very heavily to what feels like very different pieces of music as opposed to more of a cohesive sound through it. If that's your style, then maybe something like this would be perfect for a DJ playing something like that. I do think it is a fantastic studio tool though. It's a lot of these edits you could manually cut them, and for me, I still really enjoy the process of manually cutting audio to get some interesting edits, but you can definitely slam this on, even if you want to do, let's say, drum edits. Get your drum loop going, go through, play with a bunch of presets, record the whole thing, and then just cut out all the choicest, really nice pieces of edit. So I think it's definitely would be just as valuable in the studio as a production tool as well as a live effects tool. I reviewed a similar product called The Finger by Native Instruments. That's another real-time effects plugin that is in a similar vein to Stutter Edit. Now, while Stutter Edit has a lot more tools at your disposal as opposed to The Finger, one thing I did really appreciate about The Finger was the way you could layer up multiple effects, so the equivalent of multiple gestures, which is something you can't do with the Stutter Edit, which is a shame, because it would have been nice to have maybe more simple gestures and then be able to layer them up depending on what effect I was trying to create, and that would also allow a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more expression in using the effects. I want to give an honorable mention to a plugin called dBlue Glitch. Back in the olden days when I worked on PCs, it was probably one of the first plugins that I had as a real-time glitch plugin, and I got a lot of fun out of it. And it's the guy who made it is incredibly generous because he's put it up for free. It's something that it's probably one of the only things that I missed moving from PC to Mac. Can't get it on Mac, unfortunately. Was this plugin. So I want you guys to check it out because it is really cool and it is really free. It doesn't have the depth. It's definitely not a replacement for Stutter Edit, but it's a cool, fun, free plugin that I really loved. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So here's a link to it here, and there'll be a link below in the show notes and stuff as well. Now you're probably wondering how much it is. It is £160 in the UK, or roughly $240 US. If you are interested in purchasing this plugin, then please head down to TheDSPproject.com/StutterEdit. If you're watching this video on the DSP Project site, you're already here. There'll be a link below where you can click through to purchase the plugin, and then I get a small cut of the proceeds, and that would be most appreciated, and it helps to ensure that I can keep making detailed videos like this one for you guys. Also mastering, if you have any work that needs mastering, we've got some beautiful state-of-the-art analog equipment here. Head down to DSPmastering.com where you can find out more information about the studio. I'm also running a temporary deal at the moment, a loyalty card, like a coffee card thing, so for every 2 tracks that you get mastered, the 3rd one's free. So that's only going to be a temporary deal for a while, but I've got that up at the moment, so if you are interested in getting some mastering work done, DSPmastering.com. That is it from me, and I will see you next time.